Welcome to the Magdalene Voices, giving voice to those silenced for centuries through sacred conversations with beautiful, illuminating souls. I'm your host, spiritual business coach, mentor, catalyst, and facilitator, Maria Estella. I serve soul-driven, heart-based entrepreneurs, Magdalene's rising, and radiant beings just like you with the expansion and growth of yourself and your business, aligning you with your deep inner truth, bringing to life that which you're here to birth, and expressing your soul's divine purpose through your being and your doing in this world. I have just opened the doors to the Magdalene Rising Mastermind and Group Mentoring Immersion, a 6-month mentoring immersion for the soul-driven, heart-based entrepreneurs here to support the awakening, healing, unveiling, and transformation of those who are ready. It is for you who have made the journey from your mind into your heart, wanting to create, build, and lead from that space. Designed to support you in expanding and growing your business from within, it is an intimate, hands-on, practical, action, and love-based mastermind created for you to produce, create, and put into the world what has been tugging at your heartstrings forever, thus fulfilling the sacred contract and soulful promise you made eons ago. To find out more, go to mariaestella.com/mastermind. I have also just opened the Magdalene Rising Sacred Membership Circle, a sacred membership circle for you who wants to be supported in expanding, strengthening, and growing your direct access and connection to Source and divine union with that which some and I call God, so that you may see with your inner eyes, hear with your inner ears, feel with your inner system, and sense with your inner being, thus experiencing the deep satisfaction, joy, and fulfillment that comes from living fully aligned with your truth based in love. Every month you will receive a powerful new theme inviting and guiding you deeper into the layers of your awakening journey, supporting you in your unveiling, healing, transformation, expansion, and growth from within. Go to mariaestella.com/circle to get all of the deeds and the details. If you haven't already, I highly encourage you to join my newsletter to stay connected and updated. You can do so on my website, mariaestella.com, where you can also find previous episodes and their show notes. And if you have ever wondered about your Magdalene connection and calling and whether you are a Magdalene, I invite you to download the Magdalene ebook and blueprint I have created for you. Go to mariaestella.com/AYM to get it. For today's episode, I am joined by Rachael Webb. Rachael is an internationally known spiritual business advisor and sound healer. Her sacred songs of awakening activate the remembrance of hidden wisdom, gifts, and talents we carry from past or parallel lifetimes. Rachael has a special gift for seeing the latent potential in someone and providing the most appropriate experience to activate this potential. She's passionate about empowering those who have come to create innovative solutions during this time of shift on our planet. Her work with creatives and entrepreneurs allow them to find the clarity and the courage to share their gifts in a way that is both authentic and profitable. She believes in the power of community to create social change and helps her clients to increase their influence through social media. Rachael is a certified heart math mentor, clairsentient Lemurian Priestess, a doctor of metaphysics with a master's in traditional Chinese medicine, and a global coherence ambassador for the Institute of Heart Math. You can follow her daily posts on Instagram and learn more about her magical work at soulstarmedicine.com. In our sacred conversation, you will hear Rachael share her infinite wisdom about all things Lemuria. I hope you will enjoy it, but as always, take what serves you and leave the rest. It comes from our hearts to yours. Okay, Rachael, thank you so much for being willing to join me in this, what's going to be a very beautiful and sacred conversation here on the Magdalene Voices. I know that the first thing that we're going to do is that we're going to have you lead us in prayer and basically open the hearts and the minds of those who are being called into our circle or space. So I'm just going to give you the floor and let you start us off.
Oh, awesome. Thank you so much. It's so wonderful to be here with you and with everyone who is watching this and will ever hear this. And so, yeah, I would just like to take a minute to tune in. Yeah, and just really casting a circle and setting our intention to be of highest and greatest service to anyone and everyone who will ever hear these words. And we open to allow the mystery and the magic to move through us in our conversation today. And in as much as there is information and there is intonation coming through, we also invite the mystery to vibrate through us in the spaces in between the words. And so we connect our unified field out to the hearts of everyone who will ever hear this, and ask those hearts to call forth from us the perfect questions and the perfect stories and the most perfect metaphors and the most perfect intonations and the most perfect laughter and just the most perfect pauses in between all of the words, and ask their hearts to call all of those sounds and stories out of us so that our conversation may catalyze the most profound moments of realization and ahas and wow, that finally makes sense, and oh my gosh, I never thought of it that way, and all of that beautiful sweet medicine that is exactly what all of everyone who will ever hear this, their hearts are asking for. We ask their hearts to evoke those things from us. And so it is.
And so it is. Whee! I like it. It's all, I'm like, ooh, I'm all tingly, and it's like, yeah, this bubbling, giggling. It's just, I am so excited for this conversation. I said before we went on that for the past hour or so, I've been like, whoo, I feel like it's just like, it's just there's a child's laughter in me. That's just, it's such a joyous experience. So the reason why I called you in and I wanted you to come on and share your wisdom is because of Lemuria. And you're a Lemurian priestess, as I've shared. And I think the first and the very first deep dive question that I wanted to ask you is, like, what is, for those who don't know, but what is Lemuria? If you, I mean, I know it's probably a very multidimensional question, but let's go ahead and ask, what is Lemuria?
Yeah. So I love to start in the present moment. And in the present moment, there is a landmass in the middle of the Pacific Ocean called Hawaii. And the largest island is the big island of Hawaii. And so a lot of this information, there's many different sources for this information, but a lot of this information that I'm sharing tonight, this morning, in the now, is coming from in many different places, but one of the sources that I love to reference is Cryon. And so for those of you who don't know, Cryon is a multidimensional collection of consciousness that is channeled through a man named Lee Carroll. And so Cryon talks a lot about Lemuria, talks a lot about the Pleiadians and their relationship with Lemuria, and he talks a lot about our cells and our DNA and how all of this is encoded within our cellular structure. So But there is a landmass in the middle of the Pacific Ocean called the Big Island of Hawaii. And on that island is a mountain called Mauna Kea. And Mauna Kea is about 13,000 feet tall. And it's a sacred site. And so you can go up to the top, and there's actually even a pinnacle up there that's like a very sacred site. And so, but what we know from modern archaeology is that the base of Mauna Kea is not actually at sea level. It's actually an additional 10,000 feet underwater.
Whoa.
And so then it's like, so when it's measured from base to summit, Mauna Kea is actually the tallest mountain in the world. And so then, you know, well, that just begs the question, well, if the base of the mountain is 10,000 feet underwater, like what else is down there? You know, and so it's interesting now. It's like, you know, I live on Maui, and really it's like, I feel like we're living here like almost at sea level, but really we're living at what was in the top of the mountains. And so we think we're living on these islands that are at sea level, but we're living on the top of these land masses that used to be on the top of the mountain. So Lemuria was this, and you know, still is in some dimensions, this continent, this landmass that is in the center of the Pacific Ocean. And it's also a symbol for a particular texture or a particular flavor of consciousness that lives within all of us too. And that is a particular consciousness where we were in deep harmony with the land, and we were in deep harmony with the wisdom from our star families, and had relationships with them. We weren't just these aliens who are like out there, you know, it was actually a dialogue that was ongoing, and we had these incredible connections to the plants and the spirits of the plants. And this incredible intelligent connection to the water, and to so many things, to color and to sound and to all kinds of things. But there was a time when that, you know, whether you want to get into Lemuria or Atlantis, where that frequency was no longer appropriate in the large story for the evolution of the planet. And so that frequency, that island had to change and transform, and so that island then sank. And this was a huge island, right? So it's like, this was, you know, parts of Australia, New Zealand, all of, like, you know, French Polynesia, all of these islands that would call it the Pacific Rim, and even into you know, Mount Shasta area. And there's the Lemurian frequency has traveled since the island sank. And so now, it's our gift to be able to walk the path of initiating the holy resurrection of this frequency from within our own cells.
And I know that one of the things you speak about, and this is something that I really love, is the remembrance. So it's not about discovery. It's about remembering and reactivating. And there's an emphasis on the because it's not something that we are not or do not have. It's something that is encoded in us. And so it's about remembering. So how do you remember? I don't know if that's too big of a question, but how do you remember? Like what, and I have there's a million questions that is coming up, but I'll start with it because it's like, what about Atlantis? And then what about this? Because maybe I should start with the Atlantis thing, because I think that, or maybe this is just me, a lot of people know about Atlantis or have heard about Atlantis, you know, as this mystical side or whatever. But one of the things that was very, that I realized for myself was that for me, Atlantis has never called me. I was never called to explore more. Sure, it was, interesting, but there wasn't the same pull as there is with Lemuria. That was a recognition, a remembering, something is going on here. So can you speak to the differences between those two, or like what are, in terms of star nations or consciousness levels, or like, does that make sense at all, the question that I'm trying to ask?
Yeah. And so it's like, what I will begin with is that our human mind really wants quantification. And which box
Do I believe? Yes.
Tell me, so that my mind doesn't have to deal with this mystery thing.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So in our work in Remembering Lemuria, which is the first level of the Lemurian school of remembering, that I'm a part of, and that I am in the process of birthing through and stewarding, we actually don't differentiate between Atlantis and Lemuria.
Okay.
Because it's just we're just getting our toes wet here. We're not going to try and start measuring and weighing it all out and quantifying it all. So, but that said, it's I can just share my own reflections on the differences in frequencies.
Yes.
And I just really, really want to invite everyone to kind of put down their calculators and their timelines and their, the quantification and everything. And really, I might say things earlier or later or quantification things, but it's really, there's no other words. But really, it's a multi-dimensional thing that we actually don't know. Atlantis was totally what I learned first, similar to many people. And I think that's just because it's more in popular culture. There's places. There's a place called Atlantis, a full luxury hotel situation that you can go to. And there's stories about it, the Bermuda Triangle, all of that. It's this kind of technological, futuristic civilization that then came to a place where they were abusing. They got too far, and they were abusing. They weren't in right relationship with the natural elements, and so then that had to complete itself. And I think also too, it's there's more. It's not like they were punished. They weren't punished for abusing the natural elements. It was just in the long story of the development of humanity as a whole, that time needed to complete so that we could learn other lessons.
Yes, absolutely. And I love that you say not punished, because there's always, when we talk about source or God, there seems to still be this idea that we're being punished, or that we're we're the small ones in the big world, whatever. And I don't believe in that. Simply, I think that there's a natural order to things, and it's not necessarily punishment. So I just want to point that out. I love that. Yes. Sorry. Go ahead.
And then Lemuria, it's Lemuria is kind of, I feel if I'm going to describe it in colors, Lemuria is more teal and turquoise and soft greens and a little bit more pastel, whereas Atlantis definitely has some deeper blues and purples, darker greens, a lot of silver. There's more gold in Lemuria. And so in some people will say, and you have different people who have different examples, but in my memories, my first remembrance of an earth life was in a place and time where it was warm and tropical, And I was like a spirit. Like I didn't really have a human body. Like I had different areas of myself, and I was not like everything. But I was more like a fairy or a sprite or something like that. And so some people will say Lemuria wasn't even on this planet. Some people will say it was not actually in this dimension.
Okay.
But in my own experiences, in my own memories, Lemuria was a more natural place.
Yes. Yeah.
Where it was like Atlantis was a little bit more augmented. There was a relationship with nature, but it was kind of augmented and filtered through humans and technology was not a bad thing. Like it was a very organic, beautiful thing.
Yeah.
So I feel like that if I'm going to put it in planetary terms, Lemuria was more Neptunian and Atlantis was more Uranian.
Yeah, makes total sense. Yeah, and I loved how you talk about the colors as well, because for me that was one of the things when I began discovering. I was like, what is this like? Because like when you talk about teal and turquoise, I'm like every cell of my body is just like it feels like it's just sumptuous. It's just like yeah, there's a to it. So how come in terms of frequencies, because you mentioned the frequencies, and does Lemuria still exist in a different frequency?
Absolutely. It exists within the cells of everyone who is drawn to any of that we just described. Yeah, it's a cellular memory encoded within many of us.
And do you have to live on Maui to access it?
No.
Maybe that is a leading question, but it's like people are flocking Maui.
Yeah, no. Oh my gosh. Like in the Lemurian School of Remembering, we have a lot of people from Australia, but there are people all over the world. There are people in Europe, there are people in Hong Kong, there are people all over the United States. Like it's like, we've fractaled out into so many, because there's work to be done. Like if everyone was like on Maui was Lemurian, like it would be like really dull. And there would be so many places all over the world that would be underserved by the frequency that we carry, and that is meant to be proliferated throughout the world.
Yes. And in my experience, it's not only is the frequencies are not only within human beings. It's within plants and crystals and earth and water, as you said. They're like the water is basically connecting everything. So what do you think it is that or I don't know if it's just me, but is there a rise of Lemuria, or like is there a reason, like what is happening right now that makes it so important for us to remember?
Yeah. I mean, in my world, it's totally a rise. Yeah, that's like, we have remembering Lemuria that goes to rising Lemuria, that's level of the course.
Yes.
So, but it's like a resurgence, right? There's an awakening that's happening. It's just really, and I also just want to say too, that it's not like, it's not like a chosen people situation or like a particular race of like, we don't need any more of that like us and them story. That's enough of that. It's really just like we all have access to this, and it's just like, some people might have more vibrant memories in Egypt, but like Egypt was where people from Atlantis went after it sank. So it's just this contingency of experiences that's available in the human psyche.
Yes.
So I just wanted to say that.
Yes, not the chosen one. But yeah, I totally get what you're saying. It can become very religious in a sense, right? That it's the chosen ones, and it's not really. It's about we all have the I guess we all have the grains or the seeds implanted, and whether or not we choose to awaken in this lifetime or another, and through this or another form, that's really that's very beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah, and so there's many people who are magnetized to Lemuria and to doing like the work of remembering Lemuria,
Yeah.
that when we get into it, they're actually like, because there's a lot in like the Lemurian water alchemy section that's really more Avalon. You know, it's more in like the myths of like the forest around all of the sacred sites in Glastonbury or at the Chalice Wells. And so it's in the idea of like there being a resurgence of Lemurian frequency, it's just a rising and a remembering that we are more than who we are in this human experience now, and you're more than your bloodline, you know, of your current biological family, that you actually have a soul lineage in addition to your blood lineage, and that there are, like we said, there's this whole convergence of accessible information that's there, whether you are resonating with ancient Egypt, or you're resonating with Avalon, or you're resonating with Atlantis or Lemuria or ancient Greece. Like all of these are parts of the same story. So I would say we're calling it Lemurian frequency, but it's really a rise in we are more than who we think we are, and we have access to more wisdom and more knowledge and more compassion because of just existing for so long than we give ourselves credit for. And so there are all of these hidden gifts and healing abilities and inventions and ways of relating to one another, and just like whole new government dynamics and cultural dynamics that are encoded within us. And it's like, okay, like we're getting to the tail end of like what's not working here, so it's like, let's take back in our cellular structure and bring that forward.
Yes. And it seems as though that it's, first of all, I love everything you said, and I'm like, again, I'm just high-fiving and chest bumping you, because it's like, yes. And I wonder if that's the reason why it's coming up now is so strongly, is because it's actually it's time. We need it at this time. What do we do? Like, what do we do in order to remember? I know that you can't go through the whole school within our little time here, but what do you suggest for someone who's listening and is like, is being pulled, because it's not so much necessarily a mind pull, it's more of a heart pull. What do you suggest for those who feel called?
Well, I think that, because how you do anything is how you do everything, right? So if you are trying to access information that is already inside of you, but that you're not aware of, one of the best places to start is in your dreams. And so like beginning the practice of keeping a dream journal and inviting your dreams to speak to you. And for many people, they're like, oh, I don't remember my dreams, or I don't dream. And it's like, we all have dreams. It's just like, so we all have past lives. It's just like whether or not you're able to remember them.
Yes.
So we all have dreams, whether or not you're able to remember them. And it starts with the invitation.
Yeah.
And it also starts with making the space.
Yes.
right? Because
Yes.
dreams are like wild animals.
Mm.
And if you get up in the morning and you run out your front door and you jump in your car, like all of the deer that were in your front driveway are run away.
Mm. Yeah.
So allowing yourself, to wake up in a very smooth way and to
Yes.
not grab your phone right away and start
Mm.
and it's like it's kind of like you're like a new baby, and it's
Mm.
like you're kind of like, whoa, like what is
Mm.
this third dimension, like like,
Yes.
and so like be really kind to yourself. It's like I have 1 hour where I don't like I'm just landing, like
Yes.
that's just I
Yes.
wake up early so that I can have 1 hour
Yes.
of landing time.
Yes. Yes.
And I'm drinking my lemon water and I'm just like sitting, and like if there are dreams that come, then I write them down,
Yeah.
and then if there aren't, then I am just sit and
Yes.
just I'm not meditating, I'm just kind of like wandering in between this dimension and the other places that
Yes. Yes.
and a lot of times too, it's like just like making the space, creating the environment, and having like one of my friends, we were at a retreat and she really wanted to remember her dreams.
Mm.
So she just sat there with a pen and a paper for like 10 minutes,
Mm.
just waiting
Yes.
and not expecting, but just waiting. And then after 10 minutes, it was just like, like
Things to, yeah. And I want two things that you're mentioning, like first of all, the free will, that we actually have, the free will to access this, and it's a choice whether or not we want, because I think that's so important, that and then making space and time for it, because if we don't, then how do you expect, or how can you expect anything to land if you're not making space for it? It's so interesting because when I'm not sure. I think maybe I was this way as well. It's been so long, but I see it often in the people that I work with, where it's like things are supposed to be easy. I had this epiphany and now it's supposed to be easy. It's like, no, it's not, because you're running around and you're not making, like you said, you're not making space for it. How do you, when you have free will and can choose to allow what you want to allow into your life, then you have the free will and the choice to create that space for it. And once you do, then yes, you will be surprised and amazed at what can happen. But the choice is really yours, and in making space for it. As with any practice, if there's anything you want to learn or change or do, then you make space for it. And that's the same thing. There seems to be this idea then when it comes to the multidimensional, or the frequencies, or the spirituality, then it's just supposed to happen. But it doesn't, because we live in a third dimension that is physical matter, and we have to bring in the light. We have to anchor in the light if we want to access this. It is what that's what I took from what you said, and I think that's very important for people to understand. One of the things that I have been playing with, or sitting with, is the Magdalene Connection, Lemuria. Because for me, there seems to be, I'm not sure completely yet, and I want to say that for those who are listening, that for me, the Magdalenes are those who've made the journey from their minds into their hearts, and are in that space. So it's not necessarily about the Magdalene, the Mary Magdalene, but about the Magdalene consciousness, or the Magdalenes, as I call them. And there seems to me, there seems to be some kind of connection between the Magdalenes and Lemuria, and I don't know. I'm not sure exactly how, whether it has to do with the heart or the land or the plants or whatever. I'm wondering, have you ever had any thoughts about that, or ideas, or is anything coming up for you as I say it?
Well, yes.
Yeah.
And so there's gosh, it's like how to describe, because there is a connection to the being Mary Magdalene. And then there's also the connection to, like, heart-centered way of being. For sure. I mean, Mary Magdalene, she's a fractal of a soul. She's a fractal of a larger oversoul. And it's really, there's a really great book. It's called The Lineage of the Codes of Light. And actually, I don't know if it's in that one. There's two books by Jessie Ioni. She wrote The Lineage of the Codes of Light, and then there's also the one that's called The Brotherhood of the Magi. And I am not sure which one it's in. I think it might be The Brotherhood of the Magi, but they talk about the fractalization of the souls of Yeshua, Jesus, and of Mary Magdalene. And they talk about like who else in the Bible, like who else in the history was also carrying a fractal of that same soul code. And so that's a really fun way for our human mind to kind of like, how does this all work? But, you know, Mary Magdalene, you know, in like the same way, it's like there's Jesus, Yeshua, and, you know, Sananda. So that's his like ascended master name is Sananda. And so for Mary Magdalene, it's Lady Nada. And so, and they are incredible beings who have been here for thousands and millions, eons of time, facilitating the transformation of Earth. Whether you want to say they're extraterrestrial or not, it's like, you know, that's a whole different conversation. But that they've been here assisting with, you know, unconditional love. So they were absolutely around and part of the Lemurian undertaking. So there's definitely a connection that way. And then as far as like heart-centered being, like, I feel like that is, you know, whether you call it, you know, Magdalene consciousness or you call it heart coherence, you know, it's like there, it's so, you know, or you call it activating your Merkaba, right? It's like there's so many words for the same thing. And so, and that it's like, you know, you want to go the scientific round, it's like, you know, the Institute of Heart Math has like libraries of research. I feel like every book I pick up is like, oh, right, heart math. Okay, good. Oh, it's heart math again. Okay, good. About the physiological abilities of human beings to shift literally on a quantum level. This is like, you know, thoughts become things. It's heart-centered being. Right? So there's many, many, many ways to talk about this thing that's actually the same thing, and that it's that when you come home and remember that you have the key codes to all activations across all timelines throughout all dimensions that you will ever need in the center of your heart. You just have to, like, it's like meditating, right? You're like, oh, I'm here. Oh, no. So and absolutely, that was
I'm just bumping a high five, because that's the thing. It doesn't really matter about the quote unquote external appearance or what we call it. It's all at the core, it's the same, and we can call it many, many different things, but at its core, it's really the same thing. And I love that, because that also means that, again, we all carry it within us, and we, you know, it's about listening to your inner teacher and your inner guidance, and during that. I'm wondering if you would share a little bit about your personal journey, like, because did you just wake up and then it was that, or like what happened, like what happened like what happened to you? No, I'm just kidding, but like what was your own personal, I'm assuming, because it seems as though that any quote unquote teacher who's on this path is always on the path of, you know, of uncovering, unveiling, discovering, remembering. So I'm assuming that you're still on that path, but what what led you to Maui? How did you, like, what brought you there?
Yeah.
Well, we know I mean, that maybe that's a leading question because it's kind of obvious what brought you there, but did
Well,
you?
it wasn't. It wasn't in the beginning, you know. So yeah, so it was like, yeah, I was in San Francisco, and I had moved there for acupuncture school, and I had an acupuncture practice, very successful, 2 blocks from my house, the most gorgeous little treatment space, like, you know, like it's like doesn't get too much better than that, like, you know, it's like really great.
Yes.
And I was doing things my own way, you know. It was like I had been studying aromatherapy before acupuncture, so it was acupuncture with essential oils, and I had mentored with a shaman who did sound healing, so I was already doing sound healing then, and I was doing crystal grids, and, like, you know, I was doing coaching. It was just like this whole beautiful offering. And but I started to get all, you know, when something comes in and it comes in so much that you're just kind of like, what are you doing? What's going on? What are you guys doing?
Yeah.
It's kind of getting concerning. There are so many synchronicities around this.
Yeah.
And so it was all about Hawaii.
Yeah.
And I had studied marine biology in college. And so I had done that in the Bahamas. And so to me, and this sounds so, I'm like so embarrassed that I say this, but this is part of the story, knowing what I know now. But I didn't know anything about Hawaii. I thought it was where people went for their honeymoons, and I didn't know. And so I was like, why would I want to go there?
Yes.
It's like Disney World for grown-ups. Like, you know, it's embarrassing to say that now. But I was just like, you know, if I'm going to do tropical, I want to go back to the Caribbean.
Yeah.
But it was relentless. And so I was like, okay, fine. Like, I'll, you know, I was like, you know, like and kind of like the tipping point was, I received a letter from the Westin in Maui, inviting me to their new, like, beachfront property. And it was like cocktails and golf and all inclusive, whatever. And it was a price that I could afford. And so I was like, well, I don't need cocktails and golf, but, like, if that's what it looks like, okay. And I was also like, all right, angels are sending me mail. Like, I don't need to get on the head with anything.
Yeah.
So I better take some action. So I was like, okay, fine. Like, yes. Okay. Yes. Show me how.
Yes.
I'm down.
Yes.
And I thought it was going to happen one way, but that didn't work out. And then, like, 2 days after that didn't work out, my ex-boyfriend called me, and he had been living on the Big Island, and then he went back to Kentucky, and then he was like, hey, I'm going to move to Maui, and I'm going to come through San Francisco, so we should hang out. And I was just like, called him right away, and I was like, I'm coming with you. Like, and so he was like, okay, well, I don't know Maui, you know, I haven't been there before, but let's do the Big Island because I definitely know where to go. Yeah. And so we did that, and it was like, you know, I took my Lemurian crystals, and I, like, did my meditations, and, you know, did my grid work, and, you know, I was like, had, you know, more miracles than we can say in this time. But, you know, I came back from that trip with all kinds of insights, but I came back from that trip being like, okay, spiritual check, you know, I did what they asked me to do. I'm like, I'm going to go back to my life now.
As if, right?
Yeah. And so that happened for like a while, maybe a couple of months. And then again with the signs, you know, and I was like, what do you guys want? Like, I was just there, like, what? And so this is one of my favorite parts of the story. So I was walking my dog in San Francisco. It had been like recycling day. So there was, you know, sometimes there's like little pieces of newspaper that kind of, you know, float around or whatever during that time. And so there was this piece of newspaper that was following me, like, you know, there was the wind. And so it's like skittering across the sidewalk, following me while I'm walking the dog. And I'm like, that's weird. And I keep walking, and then it keeps following me. And I'm like, you know what? This is a piece of trash. Like, I should probably pick it up. But I kept walking. And so it kept following me. And finally I was like, all right, what the hell, you know? And so I picked it up, and it is a full page advertisement for a hotel on the Big Island. And so I was like, all right, like I know that the universe works upside down and backwards. And so since I got an invitation from Maui last time, but I went to the Big Island, now I'm getting an invitation from the Big Island, so I'm supposed to go to Maui. So I was just like, all right, like that's what's happening. And I already knew that I would move there. It was just like, there was like, I was going to go visit a friend, I'm going to house sit for her in Oahu. And that was going to start, you know, the whole process, because I have animals. I have a dog and a cat. So it's like a process to get them all vaccinated and everything. And in that process, I was, had been guided to stop doing acupuncture and to, you know, my guides were like, your message is much bigger than one person at a time in a treatment room. And so you're going to go online and you're going to do distance healing. And so I started doing that. And then I was working with a coach, and she was like, we spent all day in her living room, like processing and writing out all these programs and stuff. And I was really feeling good about it. And then she was like, okay, so now, you know, we've got these programs and we're going to like move your clients into these programs. And I was like, because when I like thought about the programs, I was very excited. But when I thought about my acupuncture patients, I was like, these aren't the people who are in those programs. So I was like, oh no, I've been serving the wrong people. And so I was like, okay, I have to put the brakes on. Like, I have to really, like, it was a huge wake-up call. I was like, I have to get really clear about who I am and who I want to work with and who my community is and what I want to do. And like, stop all of this just taking people to get paid situation, because it's clearly not working. Like, I want to be working with people who are like ready. To let their magic out. So I was like, okay, I got to restructure everything. And then simultaneously the clinic that I worked at, she called me and she was like, oh, I have really terrible news. We're going to have to close the clinic for 6 months. And I was just like, I literally was laughing on the phone and I was just like, you guys are funny. You guys are funny. So yeah, and that just mobilized everything. I started doing my first course called The Awakening, and it just took off from there. And then, I took my first trip to Maui in January of 2016, and it was just so clear. Like, I was just like, I'm finding a home. Like, this is what I'm doing. And I just felt like a potted plant. And I felt like I had been like put into the earth, and I was like, feeling it. And you know, I mean, so many dreams and so many magical synchronicities and just so much loving abundance. Like, the Aina, I always knew. So the Aina is what we call the spirit of the land. And so I always knew that I was coming to this land to serve the Aina. Like, that was very clear from my dreams, that it was just like, I'm coming here to serve the land, and I'm coming here to serve the people of the land, and I'm coming here to serve anybody who is here at all. Like that, anybody who is aligned with this frequency, I'm here to assist them in some way. But I didn't know what that was going to look like. You know, I was still doing my energetics and Instagram class, and like, okay, like, how's this going to work? And so, a spiritual teacher that I was working with recommended me to work with the Kahuna, and connected me with this woman on the Big Island. And I found out that she actually works with Cryon. And so there was this connection between all the Lemurian consciousness and her, ancient Hawaiian. And, you know, she lives on the Big Island, I'm here. So we did a Skype session, and it was just like, first thing blurted out of her mouth. I don't even know if she said hello, but it was just like, she was just like, you're a Lemurian priestess. She
Mm.
was like, you've been called here
Mm.
because you're coming back to this land that you used to live on many, many thousands of years ago, and you're here to retrieve your memories.
Mm.
And I was just like, right. You know, she works with Cryon. I'm sure she says that to everyone. And then she caught me and she was just like, no,
Mm.
you need to hear me,
Yes.
a Hawaiian kahuna,
Yes.
telling you that you are a Lemurian priestess. And I was like, oh, okay. So, and then that went on this whole adventure of retrieving my memories, which is another longer story. So yes.
And so now you're basic, and it's like I was gonna say full circle, but I don't see it necessarily as a full circle. I see it as a sort of spiral where you're actually expanding, because you're that's you, but then you have your own story, and then it's from there it's just expanding, because you're calling in those who are ready to hear and remember as well. So it's creating this, and it's creating, and I saw that very clearly before when you spoke about how it's not just on, you know, Hawaii or the island of Maui, but it's actually, there's this grid of awakened, I don't, but of spirit and human form that is connecting the earth. Like we're creating this grid, because, you know, we spoke about this before, I talked about it before we went on, that we're 12 hours apart, but we're still connected through this. And it's mind-blowing to me how you know, Wi-Fi and the internet is connecting us, because this is energy. There's nothing, this is not physical matter. It's basically energy, and it's so beautiful how and that's actually how I see the Magdalene Voices, this, you know, show and podcast, is that we're it's a grid that's being created all over the world or the planet to hold space for that remembering, basically, as she said it. Rachael, I don't know what else to say, but thank you. Is there anything, do you have anything else on your heart that you want to share, or are we complete?
Oh, I think there is one more little part.
Go ahead.
But that it's just to kind of like wrap that story in one more little fold of the spiral, is that I had these visions of being in tide pools with groups of people, and that we were doing healing on the water through, you know, activating our energy fields and through activating our voices and through collaborating with the colors and the geometries. And that then as the tide would come in after our work was done, it would take that water out, and it would then activate more places all over the world. And so that vision has been what has allowed me to create the Lemurian school, which is these different levels of experience. But then it's so funny, like you have this vision that then unfolds all of this other steps to come through. And so, but yeah, it's really just about healing the land, and not even like healing the land because that implies that there's something wrong with the land. But it's that and this is for anybody who is anywhere that is resonating with anything that we said today, it's that, you know, just walking outside your door or going to a park nearby and communing, whether that's taking your shoes off or putting your hands on the earth and tuning in, because the earth remembers every step you have ever taken upon her, whether you are a man or a woman or a star being. And that it's really the remembering is remembering our connection and our vows that we have with the earth, and to enter into the space of recommitting to acknowledging her and recommitting to inviting her to tell stories through us that then we might think of as our memories, but it's really this collaboration with the plants and collaboration with the stones and collaboration with the water, and that's the biggest gift of this work, is the reconnection to the earth and to ourselves, and to the greater beyond, beyond the earth. So yeah, I just feel so blessed to be able to share with you and with everyone who's listening today. Thank you.
It's the return home, basically, to the place that you never left.
Yes.
Is the way that I see it. Rachel, thank you so much for being here. And thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, Mary Stella. It's so wonderful to be here, and so wonderful to be, through you and through our conversation, having the gift and blessing of being able to reach the ears and hearts and minds and remembrances of everybody who is listening, and just that simple gift of opening up the door to say, wow, there's a different way and so much more, and that makes it all worth it. So thank you so much for gifting me this opportunity to share. I'm so deeply grateful. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. That is what we have for you in today's episode of the Magdalene Voices. I hope it served you well. If you are listening to this via podcast, know that you can go to my website, mariaestela.com. That's mariaestela.com for all of the deeds and the details. Finally, I hope you will take a moment to either leave us a comment or review and share it with your friends on social media. God bless.